Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so this is our 10th class and our last class. So there's still a lot of material left, so I have to go through it in a rather cursory way. Somebody just gave me a question. Okay, many claim that arhatship is not the ultimate nirvana. In the Lotus Sutra, when the Buddha lectured on the one vehicle, 5,000 arahats stood up and left. Actually, I think if you read the Lotus Sutra carefully, it's 500 monks get up and leave. And I don't think that they are described in the Lotus Sutra as arahats, because it says that they, if I remember correctly, they thought that they had attained what they had not attained. Is that correct? Yes. So they're not arhats, but they thought that they were arhats, and they got up and left. So is it important to set the vow on ultimate enlightenment to become a Buddha? What are your thoughts on setting out to become Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and arhats? Yeah, this is a class on the Abhidhamma. On the Abhidhamma. Yeah, it's a question that's beyond my capabilities, beyond my qualifications to answer. Excuse me?
It's above your pay grade.
My pay grade? And then if I answer one way, somebody else will have a different opinion in another way. Yeah, so I have to take questions that are pertinent to the subject matter. So you could ask whether are there two path moments in the path of arhatship, and then I could say definitely no, there's only one thought moment. Okay, so just to come back to where we were, sort of broke off in the last class. Okay, so we were doing now roughly around page 169. So we went through what is this table on absorption, the absorption jhana process. And you could see here with the initial attainment of jhana, we have, the vibration of the bhavanga, the stopping or arrest of the bhavanga, that's the A, then the mind or adverting, and for somebody with average faculties, amongst jhana attainers, there's the moment called preparation, then a moment called access concentration, then comes conformity. This is the citta which is sort of halfway, or let's say it's a citta, it's still a sense sphere citta, a wholesome, three-rooted sense sphere citta, which is now in conformity with the jhana, but it's still in the sense sphere. Then comes a citta called change of lineage, because this is sort of like the citta which is almost like halfway into the jhana. It's still sense sphere citta, but it's changing over from the sense sphere to the fine material sphere. Then comes one moment, initially, one moment of jhana. This is a little strange to me, but this is the way it's explained in the text. First, just one mind moment of jhana takes place, and then comes the dropping back into the bhavanga. So that is the procedure for the person with average faculties. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 transition moments: preparation, access, conformity, change of lineage, then jhana. For somebody with keen or sharp faculties, they don't need that moment of preparation. So they go directly from mind door adverting to access, then to conformity, then to change of lineage, then to jhana, and then they fall back into bhavanga. So this is for the jhana. And I have to stress that this is supposed to be just the first attainment of the jhana. We're going to see afterwards, as the meditator gets more experience, they can extend the jhana to the point where the jhana chittas can go on for a whole day, several days in succession, unbroken series of jhana chittas. Okay, for the attainment of path and fruit, it's partly similar but partly different. Okay, for the practitioner with average faculties, that's relatively average, since to reach the path and fruit takes extraordinary faculties, but relatively average. So they have the bhavanga vibrates, it stops, then comes mind door adverting, then also preparation, access, conformity, change of lineage, then comes one moment of the path. And the path for all 4 paths is always just one mind moment, because the function of the path is to destroy defilements. And once a certain set of defilements is destroyed, there's no more need for that path. It's finished, it's done its job, out the window. Then the path for the average person is followed by 2 moments called the fruit. These are the chittas, which are the fruits of the path. And what's interesting is that all of this is taking place in the jhana process, and the fruits are resultant chittas occurring in the jhana process. Those, I think, the only resultant chittas in the Abhidhamma that take place in the jhana stage. And the difference between the path and the fruit, each path has its own corresponding fruit. So the path of stream entry, fruit of stream entry. Path of once returning, path of non-returning. Path of arhatship, fruit of arhatship. So the difference is that the path cuts off the defilements, and then the fruit experiences what's called the bliss of freedom from those defilements. And so similarly, for the average person, there's that moment of preparation. Here it's called PR. For the practitioner with sharp or keen faculties, there's no moment of preparation. And so this practitioner, again, one moment of the path, but in this case, 3 moments of fruition. So because this practitioner has sharp faculties, they can enjoy 3 moments of fruition rather than 2. Okay, now I want to jump over to section number 22. Okay, this is the jhana in attainments, that is, in the attainments of the path and the fruit. The attainment of jhanas, the path and the fruit. Do you have it on page 176? Okay, so I have it at the bottom of page 176. Okay, so the text says, the sublime jhanas for a beginner during the first cognitive process of absorption, and the direct knowledge jhanas always run only once. Then comes the fall into the bhavanga, the life continuum. Here we don't want to have to be concerned with direct knowledge. That means the ability to exercise the shantong, the psychic powers. But we focus just on the jhanas. So during the first experience of absorption, the citta, which experiences the jhana in the jhavana stage, just one citta experiences that jhana, then followed by the bhavanga, the life continuum. Okay, then the text continues, the arising of the four paths endures for only one mind moment, and then it's followed by 2 or 3 occasions of the fruition consciousness, according to the case, and then comes the fall into the life continuum. Then we'll skip over the section on the attainment of cessation. And then going down to the last paragraph in this text, it says, in the cognitive process of attainments, as in the stream of the life continuum, there is no fixed procedure regarding the processes. It should be understood that even many sublime and supramundane jhavanas take place, and then is added in immediate succession. And then the explanation of this statement comes on page 178, where it's in bold, in the cognitive process of attainments. And here the explanation says, this is said to show that in the attainment of jhana and fruition, through practice, it is possible to extend the duration of the absorption. For beginners, the attainment occurs for only one jhavana moment, but with practice, the attainment can gradually be increased to 2, 3, 4 jhavanas, while for those who have achieved mastery over the attainment, the absorption cittas occur in unbroken succession for long periods of time, even for days on end. So we read in the suttas, sometimes somebody sits down, and they say that they sit for 3 or 4 days in a particular jhanic attainment. I think the Buddha sat after his enlightenment in fruition attainment for 7 days. And now, initially, the fruition cittas occur the first time right after the path. So say one achieves the path of stream entry, then right after that there'll be 2 or 3 moments, the fruit, which are the fruit of stream entry. But somebody who becomes a stream enterer can train to re-enter the fruition, not going through the path again. You can't go through the same path twice. But once you reach a particular attainment, one could go into the fruition and then remain absorbed in that fruition attainment for an extended period of time, for hours, maybe even days. Okay, so I said I think you could enter and stay in fruition, even up to a week, perhaps even longer. But usually they speak about the accomplished practitioners going in for 7 days. I remember reading about the Venerable Shu Yun, who went into an absorption, I think he said, was it 19 days? In a meditative absorption in Thailand? Was it 9 days or 19 days? Something like that. 9 days, yeah. So probably that would have been a jhanic attainment, lasting, just citta following citta. So when one is in that absorption, then there's no bhavangas coming in to interrupt it. You're just a jhana process going on for days and days. Okay, so now there's more to this chapter on the cognitive processes, but I want to go now into the chapter on the process-freed states. This chapter is dealing in greater detail with the cittas that perform the function of rebirth linking, the bhavanga or life continuum, and then the death consciousness, the death experience. So this is chapter 5. And we have this beginning on page 185. Well, maybe I should ask, were there any questions on the jhana process and absorption? Yeah, please. Maybe there's a microphone that... There's one coming. Okay.
Is there a practical benefit to someone's practice if they're not an arahant and if they've attained these attainments to go into fruition for such a long period of time? Or is it just a pleasant abiding?
It's really just a pleasant abiding, because in the fruition one is experiencing the bliss of nibbana during that attainment. Yes, please. Yeah, there's a little switch.
Okay, thank you, Venerable.
Yeah.
I had a question about when the Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree, it said that he attained enlightenment at that time.
Yeah.
Was that going through all 4 stages of the enlightenment process in the same sitting?
That's an interesting question. I mean, you're asking whether he went through the stream entry once?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the suttas themselves, nothing is said about going through those preliminary stages. It just said that, as he sat there, he went through what's called the 3 higher knowledges, recollection of past lives, the divine eye, and then in the last watch of the night, he attained the destruction of the defilements. But I think it's like the commentaries say that he went very rapidly through those 4 stages. And even sometimes in the suttas, very, very occasionally, the Buddha will give a discourse to somebody who is just, as long as my, to somebody who is an ordinary person, and then it's said in the sutta that that person, while listening to the discourse, achieved arhatship on the spot. But then the commentary will say that they went very quickly, like boom, 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 through the 3 preliminary stages.
So it's assumed that it does have to follow the progression, but that could be all at one sitting.
Oh yes, certainly all at one sitting.
Thank you.
Yeah, but whether the Buddha actually goes through all 4 of them, that's the commentarial explanation. The sutta doesn't say anything like that. Take that microphone.
A couple questions. For the preparatory chittas before entering dhyana, do those only happen the first time you enter dhyana, or every time you enter you would have these preparation access, conformity,
Yeah,
change.
one would have them each time.
Every time.
Yeah.
The other question I had, and this may be outside of the bounds of the classes, but this attainment of cessation,
Yeah.
like, how does the Abhidhamma account for the return of consciousness after cessation?
It's already explained in the sutta that one makes the determination in advance that one is going to, or maybe it's not explained that way in the sutta. No, I think it is that one makes the determination in advance that one is going to stay in the attainment of cessation for such and such a period of time, whether an hour, 2 hours. And then because one has that determination in advance, somehow, even though the stream of mind has been cut off, somehow that determination functions to bring about the re-emergence of the stream of consciousness.
So,
yeah, I see a hand go up. Oh, I see, okay.
So the question is, in terms of the principle of the how Jhana operates.
How?
Yeah, for a person who is cognitive intense, is the Jhana operates more faster than a person who is more dull, not that sharp. I mean, the cognitive intensity is the same speed. I mean, the Jhana.
Is the jhana more intense for that person?
Jhana, I mean,
Yeah.
if I put it in another way, so for a person who is cognitive intense, is the jhana run more faster than a person who is relatively slow?
No, the jhana, I think each jhana citta will occur at the same speed. There's no difference in the speed. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the jhana cittas all take the same amount of time. There's no difference that a duller person has a longer jhana, a quick-witted person has a quicker jhana.
Maybe I'm thinking before I ask my question, it might help to know why she asked that question. Okay, she doesn't want to explain.
You're teasing her.
My question was when you mentioned determination, making the determination to answer the gentleman's question earlier, is that the same as what we call a vow?
It isn't like a vow. A vow means that you are like aspiring for something. But this is like a decision. Just like, I don't know, it's a little bit like if you're sitting and going to do a regular sitting in meditation, like maybe you have a little alarm clock or timer and you set the timer maybe 45 minutes, an hour, whatever. Then when 45 minutes go by, then that little timer will go beep, 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 beep. So it's not like making a vow. Because usually the idea of vow means that you have to make a strong determination. But this is a decision that I'm going to enter the jhana or the fruition attainment, maybe 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And then, this was actually the cessation attainment. So the cessation attainment. So then when that, say, if you determine for 1 hour, then when the 1 hour goes by, then one automatically comes out. Yeah.
In the Mahayana text, we usually say that the Buddha reached beyond arhatship.
Yeah.
That's not the case in the Pali text?
No, the Buddha, as far as liberation goes, he attains the path and fruit of arhatship. But the Buddha has, because of his past practice of the paramitas as a bodhisattva and his past vows, when he reaches the attainment of Buddhahood, then he acquires many other sort of special qualities that go along with the attainment of liberation. Yeah.
Other people, when they attain the arhatship, they only stay there, they don't go beyond?
Well, there are different sets of qualities that might accompany a person's attainment of arhatship. So some have sort of practiced in past lives with the intention of becoming arhat with, say, the 6 super knowledges, the 6 shantong. Some to achieve arhatship with the 3 higher knowledges, the recollection of past lives, the divine eye, and then the destruction of the defilements. Others acquire certain special skills in teaching, like that, so that there are different kinds of knowledges that can accompany the attainment. And of course, for the Buddha, there's like a vast amount of qualities that go along. But in terms of the destruction of the defilements, it's the same basic chittas, the path chittas that cut off those defilements. Okay, shall we go now into the chapter on the process freed? So this is 185. Okay, so the basic themes in this chapter, we have them in English on the bottom of page 185. The 4 planes of existence, the 4 kinds of rebirth linking, the different sets of 4 kinds of karma, and then the 4-fold advent of death. And then we can skip over this table for now. But the explanation on the guide to page 2, a guide to section 2, actually, I'd suggest you read that at your leisure, but I think it's very important for understanding the relationship between the mind and the world in the Abhidhamma. So maybe just summing up the principle here. So usually we think of the world as being something completely external to the mind, and the mind is just like a traveler that comes into the world, sort of like an unexpected guest who arrives in the world. But according to the Abhidhamma, or even according to the Buddha's teaching, mind and the world are sort of intricately interdependent. So the reason why we experience a particular world, in our case, the human world, this world in which we're living, is because we, in previous lives, have created the karma that has brought us into this world. And within this world, now, we're creating karma that can bring us either back into this world or into other worlds, other planes of existence. And so the particular plane of existence in which we're living is a reflection of our past karma. And our present karma will determine the world in which we will find ourselves in the future. So if we create, say, heavenly karma, that will lead us maybe to a rebirth in one of the heavenly realms. While we're in this world, like people with a scientific education say, this world is real, the heavens and hells, that's just all imaginary stuff, superstition from the past. But I can imagine the scientific devas and the deva worlds say, this world is real. And those devas talking about human beings, that's just superstition. A lot of hogwash. And then I don't suggest this, but if you want to find out whether there's really hell realms or not, I mean, one way to do that, a little difficult, is to develop the divine eye. Then you could remain a human being and then you can see the heavens and the hells. But if you don't develop the divine eye, then you can go around killing and doing a lot of bad deeds. Then you'll find out that there is a hell, or actually various hells. Okay, so here the text speaks about 4 planes of existence, but actually there's really 3 planes of existence. But one of those planes is the sense sphere plane. And then the text divides the sense sphere plane into 2 parts. One is called the woeful plane. This is in Pali, it's the Ukiah. This is the realm of misery, the bad rebirths, the realm of the bad rebirths. And then the other is the sense sphere, blissful or happy plane, relatively happy. And then we're going to see what they are as we go on. Okay, so then the third is the fine material plane. Those are the planes that correspond, those are planes of existence that correspond to the jhanas. And then there's the immaterial plane. That is the plane that corresponds to the immaterial or formless attainments. Okay, then the woeful plane, the Ukiah, consists of hell, or actually there's a multitude of hells. Then the animal kingdom. Then there's the sphere of the Petas. This is what, in Chinese, it gets translated as Wei. So that's why in English we come to know it as the realm of hungry ghosts. But the word Peta actually means, or Sanskrit preta, the departed ones. But it signifies beings who are like ghostly beings. Some of them are overcome by severe hunger, others by extreme thirst. And then there's a type of asura. The main type of asuras are actually part of one of the Deva worlds, the Tavatingsa or Triatingsa Deva world. But there's a type of asura which is explained here, that according to the commentary it says that, here I'm on page 190, as a realm within the woeful plane, the commentators identify the asuras here with a group of tormented spirits similar to the pretas. And these asuras are to be distinguished from the asuras who dwell in the Tavatingsa heaven, who are always fighting with the devas there. Okay, then the sensuous, blissful, or fortunate plane, we have seven realms in this plane. There's the human realm, which, do we have any concrete evidence that that realm exists? Okay, then there's the realm of the 4 great kings, the realm of the Tavatingsa, the 33 gods, the Yama gods, and then the Tusita heaven, the delightful realm. Then the realm of the gods who rejoice in their own creations, and the realm of the gods who control the creations of others. I have my own idea about who gets reborn in the gods who rejoice in their own creations and the gods who control the creations of others. The ones who rejoice in their own creations, those would be like the great musicians and poets and sculptors and painters. They get reborn there. Then the ones who get into the gods who control the creation of others, those are the editors, the publishers. The film directors. Or actually the film director is a creative person. It's the producer, the film producers. Don't take notes on that. It's not... Okay, then we come to the fine material plane. And this plane is said to have 16, there are 16 realms within this plane, and 4 of them correspond to the 4 jhanas. Actually, they are the 4 planes corresponding to the 4 jhanas. And so we have the first jhana plane. So those who achieve a kind of weak version of the first jhana, they take rebirth in the realm of Brahma's retinue. Then those who develop the first jhana to a middle degree, and then you have to master the jhana, not just attaining it once or twice, but mastering it. Then those who master the first jhana to a middle degree take rebirth in the realm of Brahma's ministers, and those who master the first jhana to a superior degree take rebirth in the realm of the Mahabrahmas. And then for the second jhana plane, now because there's 5 jhanas according to the Abhidhamma, so they say that those who attain the second and third jhana in the 5-fold scheme take rebirth in the second jhana plane. And again, which of these 3 realms they'll take rebirth in depends on whether they develop it to an inferior, middling, or superior degree. Okay, then those who develop the 4th jhana in the Abhidhamma scheme take rebirth in the 3rd jhana plane, again, according to the degree of mastery in one of these 3 realms. Now in the Pali Abhidhamma system, for the 4th jhana plane, there is only one usual realm of rebirth. That is called the realm of great reward. But I believe, according to the Sarvastivada Abhidhamma, does anybody know Sarvastivada Abhidhamma? I think that there are 3 normal realms of rebirth in the Sarvastivada Abhidhamma. I think also the Yogacara will also follow the same scheme. And that makes better sense to me, since one will develop the 5th jhana to inferior, middling, or superior degrees. So there should be 3 realms corresponding to that. But in the Pali system, for some reason, they just have the realm of great reward. But then there's another realm for the 5th jhana, a rather strange one, called the realm of non-percipient beings. And this is for certain types of people want to get rid of their consciousness. And so as human beings, they develop the 5th or the 4th jhana in the Sutta scheme, the 5th jhana in the Abhidhamma scheme, and then they make a strong vow or determination, may I take rebirth without consciousness. And because of the power of the jhana, when they pass away, they take rebirth into this realm where they have just material bodies, no consciousness. But then when the lifespan comes to an end there, then they take rebirth elsewhere. I think usually in the human realm, and then the consciousness will arise again. Okay, then there's another section in the fine material sphere, or fine material plane, which is called the pure abodes. And these are realms of existence that are reserved only for non-returners. So to be reborn into these realms as a human being, one has to have achieved the state of non-returner. And then they're differentiated, I guess, on the basis of the jhana attainment of the non-returners at 5 levels. So we have these 5 pure abodes. And then it's within these pure abodes that non-returners attain arhatship, attain final liberation. So say a human being achieves the state of non-returner as a human being, then they pass away and take rebirth into one of the pure abodes, and then within the pure abodes they'll achieve arhatship and not come back to the human realm ever again. Okay, so that is the fine material sphere. And then there is the immaterial sphere, the immaterial plane, and that is divided into 4 realms. And these 4 realms, you can see at once, correspond to the 4 immaterial meditative attainments. So there's the realm of infinite space, the realm of infinite consciousness, realm of nothingness, realm of neither perception nor non-perception. And these are the 4 planes of rebirth for those who master a particular immaterial meditative attainment. And they will be reborn into the particular realm that corresponds to the meditative attainment that they've mastered. It's an interesting question for me, whether, say, a meditator attains an immaterial attainment, but it seems to me like a bad place to be reborn if one wants to progress in the Dharma, because in the immaterial attainment there's no physical form, so you don't get to hear any Dharma teaching. The beings in the Brahma realms, even when a Buddha arises in the world, you can see in some of the suttas, they come to listen to the Buddha's discourses because they have subtle bodies and ears so they can hear. But in the immaterial sphere, there's no physical body, and yet it would seem that a meditator, in fact, I know that there's a Pao, Soyado, a Burmese meditation master, teaches his disciples to attain the immaterial attainments. So I would assume that one could reach these attainments and determine not to be reborn in those planes, so that one will have the opportunity to learn the Dhamma more with the physical body. Okay, now we come to the important section. This is called the 4 types of rebirth linking. In a way, we already sort of had a foretaste of we already touched on this topic, but now we'll explore it in greater detail. Okay, so it's said here that rebirth linking is fourfold. That is, rebirth linking in the woeful plane, in the bad destinations, rebirth linking in the sensuous, blissful plane, rebirth in the fine material sphere, rebirth linking in the immaterial sphere. Okay, first, rebirth linking in the woeful plane. This is rebirth in any of the bad destinations of rebirth. Okay, so here the text says that the unwholesome, resultant, investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity. No. Okay, so this is the unwholesome, resultant, investigating consciousness. Now remember, in our section on the functions of consciousness, we explained that this particular citta, it's called the investigating consciousness because that is its most notable function, its particular function. But it also has the additional functions of serving as the rebirth, bhavanga, and death consciousness for the beings in the bad realms of rebirth. So it's that same type of consciousness, but it's not functioning as investigation. It's not performing the function of investigation. Rather, it's here performing the function of rebirth linking. So at the moment of descent into the woeful plane, the moment a being is reborn in the woeful plane, the rebirth consciousness is that unwholesome resultant consciousness accompanied by equanimity that usually performs the function of investigation. Okay, so then rebirth linking takes place. Then the same kind of citta continues to perform the function of bhavanga during the course of life, and then at the very end of the life, it performs the function of the death consciousness. So that for all the beings in the bad destinations, the animals, hell beings, the hungry ghosts, they all have their rebirth consciousness is in every case, it's said to be this unwholesome, resultant, investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity. In the case of rebirth into the sense sphere, blissful realms or fortunate realms, there are different kinds of cittas perform the function of rebirth linking. Okay, the wholesome, resultant, investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity occurs as the rebirth linking, life continuum, and death consciousness. I don't like the expression deformed, of human beings in the sensuous, blissful plane who have certain, maybe call them disabilities, such as those who, by reason of their rebirth consciousness, are born blind, deaf, mute, mentally retarded, mentally deranged, and so on. So this is when that condition is sort of genetically determined, not in the case of somebody who becomes blind in the course of life, or even because of something that happens during the embryonic period, but it's something inherent in the ovum itself, the seed or the genetic code of that person. So they're reborn as a human being through wholesome karma, but it's a relatively weak wholesome karma because of the disability. Okay, then the 8 great resultants. Remember the 8 so-called great resultants. Okay, those are the 8 sense sphere beautiful resultant chittas, the sense sphere beautiful resultant chittas, 4 accompanied by knowledge, 4 dissociated from knowledge. So those 8 great resultants act as the rebirth linking life continuum and death consciousness for all beings in the sense sphere fortunate realms of existence. For the beings in the Deva worlds, the 6 sense sphere Deva worlds, and human beings. And so we have 9 chittas that function as the rebirth linking consciousness in the sensuous blissful plane. And when we take the type of citta that serves as rebirth linking in the bad destinations, then we have 10 kinds of rebirth consciousness in the sense sphere, sense sphere planes. I'll skip over the section on the lifespans, but you could just see from the chart the different lifespans. Okay, then I'll go over to section 13. This is rebirth linking in the fine material sphere. Okay, and let us get the chart. Okay, the first jhana resultant consciousness occurs in the first jhana plane as the rebirth linking life continuum and death consciousness. So if you remember in our table of the fine material sphere chittas, which you can see here, we have the first jhana, and then when you attain the jhana as a meditation, that's the wholesome citta. The first jhana resultant citta, that is what performs the function of rebirth linking, life continuum, and death consciousness in those realms of existence corresponding to the first jhana, that is, in the different Brahma realms. Yeah, so the first jhana resultant functions as the rebirth linking for the beings in these 3 realms of existence. Then the second jhana resultant citta and the third jhana resultant citta occurs as the rebirth linking, bhavanga, and death consciousness for the beings in these 3 realms, the second jhana plane. Then the fourth jhana resultant serves as the rebirth linking consciousness for the being in the third jhana plane, and the fifth jhana resultant serves as the rebirth linking consciousness for the beings in the fourth jhana plane. I think it would have been neater if they didn't bring in the 5 jhanas and kept, like the suttas, just used the 4 jhanas. then you get a neater correspondence between the jhana plane or the jhana attainment and the plane of rebirth. You could see this, if I remember, if you want to take note. I think it's Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fours, Sutta number 123. It's not that I have a super memory, it's just that I've referred to this sutta many times to show people the correspondence between jhanas and planes of rebirth. Okay, then we won't go into the specifics of the lifespan, but sort of as you go up the scale of the devas and the Brahma worlds, the lifespan keeps on getting longer and longer and longer, exponentially longer and longer. Okay, then we come to rebirth linking in the immaterial sphere, the four immaterial planes. And so here it's quite obvious that the first immaterial resultant citta becomes the rebirth linking life continuum and death consciousness in the first immaterial plane, that's the plane of infinite space, and similarly with the second, third, and fourth immaterial attainments. And just to get some idea of how long the lifespan is getting, so in the immaterial plane, at the first level, the lifespan is 20,000 aeons. The second level, it's 40,000. The third level, 60,000 aeons. And then at the fourth level, sort of you get like an extra, you earn interest on your attainment. So you get not 80,000 aeons, but 84,000. They throw in an extra 4,000. But if one doesn't have, the wisdom to reach the supramundane, the world transcending attainments, you spend 84,000 aeons in this realm of neither perception nor non-perception. Then when it's all over, you come back. It won't be into our human world because we're ancient history by the time you come back. It's some cosmic aeon, unimaginably long in the future. But they'll still be, going to kindergarten, getting into high school, applying for college, looking for a job, maybe collecting unemployment insurance, getting married, bringing up kids. Maybe any questions now, sort of we've covered the cosmology. Okay. At a certain point I'll have to cut the questions off because people usually have dozens of questions about this. But please feel welcome. Yes, Jerry.
Because I have no idea about this, but how much of this cosmology was in existence or how much of it was totally new for the Buddha?
I think in details, to my knowledge, it's pretty much original to the Buddha. I mean, there could have been correspondences to this, maybe in the Jain system. The Brahmins, of course, had the concept of the Brahma world, but in the suttas, what the Brahmins aspire to is said simply to be simply rebirth in the Brahma world. These distinctions of levels in the Brahma worlds, I don't think we find them in any Brahminic text. Do you know about the Brahminic text?
I don't know about the different Brahma levels. Maybe in the Puranas, but those would have come later.
Yeah, the Puranas would be much later, yeah.
Alex Wynn has looked into some of these questions, at least in terms of some of these absorptions that the Buddha may have been familiar with from the Brahminical.
That what? I didn't catch it.
Alexander Wynn.
Yeah, he made.
Origins of Buddhist Meditation.
Yeah.
His book, yeah.
Oh, I see. He deals with that question, how much of this is original to the Buddha?
Yeah, not so much the cosmology per se, but he does get into a little bit to the yogic, Brahminical practices, and some of these, like the perception, neither perception or non-perception, these questions. So you could look there.
Those ideas seem to have been around before the time of the Buddha, at least if we take the suttas at face value, because the Buddha learned those meditations under his first meditation teachers, though he then rejected those teachings because he saw that they didn't lead to liberation.
This is in the same vein, and maybe my last question. The notion of hell, I'm not at all an expert on that, but it's the little bit I know of the Christian or Catholic hell, which I wasn't raised in that tradition. Yeah. It just sort of seems the parallels are sort of striking to me, which is that we don't pay the price on this life for our misdeeds. We pay them in the afterlife.
Yeah.
Is that another coincidence, or is there a connection there? Or
whether there's influence, I mean, if there were influence, it would probably go from India, from Buddhism, maybe to the Middle East or to the Palestine region where Christianity arose. Yeah, I don't know. These are questions that I don't have the background to be able to answer. But I could see psychologically, one could see how a thinker would, or religious thinker would arrive at the notion that evildoers, they don't pay the compensation. They get away with, literally sometimes getting away with murder in this life, so they have to pay the price someplace. And there has to be a realm that corresponds to the gravity of their evil deeds.
Except for I would just disagree and say that perhaps they do pay a price in this life.
Yeah, I don't. How is that?
Well, not being a murderer, I don't know, but I assume that once, even for minor misdeeds, if you have any conscience, and they stay with you and they keep teaching you lessons.
Oh, let us take. I don't want to get into an argument about this, but okay, let's say Adolf Hitler. He's responsible for the murderous deaths of 10 million people, maybe more if you take all of those who died in the war. So he's pretty much riding the tide of glory up to 1944, when the Nazi military starts to collapse. So he has to suffer with the misery of the defeat of his ambitions for 1 year, then suppose that there's no hell. So then everything is over in 1 year. So that's a pretty small price to pay for brutally murdering 10 million people, my opinion. Next question.
For a human realm, like, do we have another Earth that is like similar to this Earth?
Well, according to the Buddhist text, there are like world systems, countless world systems spread out all over boundless space, and they will have realms that maybe are counterparts to the human realm.
So we might be born into other...
It seems to me, this is my opinion, the texts don't say anything about this, but we probably get reborn into the same world system in which we're living, except for maybe times when the world system comes to an end at the end of a cosmic aeon.
And then we'll be born in another world?
Maybe, I don't know. Okay, yeah.
I have a quick question. I noticed you use aeons here. Is that the same as kalpas?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. The Pali word is kappa, which is just the Pali counterpart of Sanskrit kalpa.
Right. Aeon is a different definition than kalpa, right?
Well, I'm using aeon as a translation of kalpa.
Okay.
Yeah.
But English word aeon has a the different lengths than Kappa. Kappa is pretty fixed.
Yeah.
It's 16.8 million years.
Yeah.
According to the
And
calculation.
the aeon, I don't think aeon has a...
Aeon is not that exact the number.
Yeah, but we need some word to render kalpa. Otherwise, then I use kalpa. And then, okay, the section on karma, let us see what we can cover in the section on karma. Maybe, to really deal with it well, it would take like a whole class, a whole session. But I'll try to pick up the important points here. Okay, so there are the karma or volition, so it's volitional action or intentional action that creates karma. And the karmas can function in different ways. And so we have 4 functions of karma mentioned here. The first is called productive karma, or we could also call it generative karma. And accordingly, we could jump across to the explanation on page 201. So productive karma is wholesome or unwholesome volition which produces resultant mental states and then certain types of material phenomena, both at the moment of rebirth linking and during the course of existence. So the most important function of the productive karma is to produce or to generate the rebirth linking consciousness. So the rebirth linking consciousness is a resultant citta, and it's the result of a karma in its generative or productive function. So at the moment of conception, I'm reading now from the text, productive karma generates the rebirth linking consciousness and the types of matter that are born of karma that constitute the physical body of the new being. So at the moment that sort of that ovum gets fertilized and becomes the body of a living being, it's said to be karma-produced materiality. Okay, then during the course of existence, karma will produce other resultant cittas, and it also will produce certain types of karma-born materiality. And so it's said that for example, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body sensitivity, those types of matter are produced by karma. And so too, I think the heart base is said to be produced by karma. Not the physical heart, but that heart base, that's the base for the mind. Yeah, also the sexual determination, whether one becomes male or female, is a result of karma, or a product of karma. Okay, so that is karma in its productive function. Okay, the second function of karma is the supportive function. And then the text explains that supportive karma is karma that does not get the opportunity to produce its own result, but when some other karma is producing its result, in this function, let me go back. Okay. So supportive karma is karma which does not get an opportunity to produce its own result, but when some other karma is exercising a productive function, then then this karma supports it by enabling it to produce its pleasant or painful results over an extended period of time without obstruction, or by reinforcing the continuum of aggregates produced by the other karma. That sounds a bit technical, no? Let's see if we could put this into simpler language. Okay, let's maybe leave the technical language and just put it simply. Okay, karma A produces certain results. Now, karma B is not producing its own results, but it is strengthening karma A so that it produces its results maybe more intensely and over a longer period of time than it would if it didn't have the support of karma B. Okay, so that is the supportive function of karma. Then comes obstructive karma. So this is karma that will obstruct the productive karma. So we have the explanation here on page 202. So obstructive karma is karma which cannot produce its own result, but obstructs and frustrates some other karma, countering its efficacy or shortening the duration of its pleasant or painful results. So in this case, we have the productive karma A is producing its results, but now karma B comes along in the obstructive role, and it starts weakening karma A, so that instead of producing really strong, pleasant, or painful results, karma A will produce weaker, pleasant, or painful results. Or it will be shorter. Its production of the results will be shortened. Okay, and then we have destructive karma. This is karma that this function of karma, if we go to the explanation, this is wholesome or unwholesome karma which supplants weaker karma, which replaces weaker karma, which prevents it from ripening and instead produces its own result. Usually the classical case of this is somebody who might have been reborn, say, with a productive karma that tends to a lifespan of 80 years or 85 years. But that person also has created some karma, some bad karma in the past that is taking on the destructive function. And so even though the productive karma is tending towards a lifespan of 85 years, but now as this person is happily driving down the road, he's 30 years old, whistling a happy tune, some drunk driver comes down, rushing down from the other across the intersection, slams into his car, and kills him at the age of 35 or 35. So that would be some destructive karma has gotten the opportunity to ripen. Okay, there are other technical explanations, but I think that gives us a general idea of these different functions of karma. Okay, now we come to a very important topic, for all of us, and this is the order of ripening of karma. And particularly, this is the ordering of karma. I saw somebody just left the room. This karma could really be a life and death matter. I think somebody just went out to tell this section could be a life and death matter. Okay, this is the order in which a karma will take on the role of determining rebirth, the next existence. And so we have the karmas are classified in 4 ways here. The weighty, the death proximate, habitual karma, and reserve karma. So as the explanation says, this concerns the order of precedence amongst the different karmas in taking on the role of generating rebirth linking in the next existence. Okay, so the one that will take precedence over all other karma is what's called weighty karma or heavy karma. And this can be either unwholesome or wholesome. On the unwholesome side, the weighty karma is especially, we call it, I use the translation, the 5 terrible crimes, or the 5 heinous crimes. In Pali, it's anantariya karma, which means without interval. So these are the things like taking the life of one's mother, taking the life of one's father, killing an arahat with a mind of hatred, wounding the Buddha so that he sheds blood, and then maliciously creating a schism in a harmonious sangha. And then certain types of morally disruptive wrong view are also considered weighty karma. Somebody strongly holds the view that it doesn't matter what you do, you can do anything you want, that there are no consequences to face. Okay, on the good side, the wholesome side, are the attainment of the jhanas, or the formless meditations. So if one attains those jhanas, then that will be a weighty karma, weighty good karma. But it's possible that a person can develop the jhanas, and then later, because the mind gets corrupted, they can commit the terrible crimes. Like the example given is Devadatta, who had mastered the jhanas in his early life as a monk, but then he became ambitious to take over the leadership of the Sangha, and so he wounded the Buddha and tried to create a schism in the Sangha. And so that was the weighty bad karma, because of which he was reborn in the lower world. Okay, if there is no weighty karma, then the next karma that gains precedence in determining the rebirth is called the death proximate karma. And this is some morally significant deed that one might do shortly before death. For example, I have some examples here, that a person of bad character might remember a good deed he has done, or might perform a good deed just before dying. And so a person, say, of bad character might suddenly think, oh, I've lived such a bad life, I really regret it, I wish that I could have lived a much better life, and I determine if there is a future life that in the future, I will be a good person. And so that is creating like a powerful mental force for the next existence. So as a result of that, just before death, that person can have a good rebirth. And in the opposite way, somebody who's lived a good life, just before death, they might give rise to evil thoughts or dwell on an evil deed that they performed earlier. And because of that, that karma will take on the role of generating rebirth and can produce an unhappy rebirth. It doesn't mean that this person escapes the consequences of their other deeds. Those deeds eventually will catch up with them. It's just that because shortly before death, they've given rise to this, on the one side, good thoughts, on the other side, evil thoughts or evil deeds. That consciousness will take on the role of determining the rebirth. But eventually one never escapes one's good or bad deeds. Okay, then suppose there's no sudden change just before death. And this is probably what takes place in the great majority of cases. The karma that takes on the role of generating the rebirth will be what is called habitual karma. So this is the kind of karma that one performs habitually. Some habitual, it could be either good or bad. So probably for most people, this will be the karma that determines rebirth. And then the fourth type of karma is called reserve, is translated as reserve karma, but literally it means some deed that simply has been done. And this is any other deed not included in the other three categories that is strong enough to take on the role of generating rebirth. So it could be that some chance deed that one has done, just somehow it just comes up out of the blue, so to speak, and dominates the rebirth, the death process, and therefore it will determine the rebirth in the next existence. This is a little bit like I call it the counterpart to the Heisenberg indeterminacy principle. Like it's just something that's could be utterly undetermined. And to avoid something like that happening with a bad karma coming up, this is why it's important to train the mind through bhavana, through meditation. When the mind is trained through meditation, then we have a strong mind, so that we could bring that strong mind into the death process and protect the mind from these, especially from these chance, unpredictable, bad memories coming up and governing the rebirth process. Okay, we could pass through the next group of categories. A little bit easy to go through. Okay, so here we have 4 kinds of karma. One is called immediately effective karma. That is karma that produces its result in this life itself. So it's not the case that karma always will produce its result in a future life, but certain karmas come to maturity in this life. And if that karma which is due to ripen in the present life doesn't get the opportunity to ripen, it becomes defunct. It won't ripen at all. Okay, the second type of karma is called subsequently effective karma. This is karma which has the tendency to ripen in the next existence, the immediately next existence. And if it doesn't get the chance to ripen in the next existence, then it becomes defunct. The third type of karma is called indefinitely effective karma, and that is karma that can ripen at any time from the second future existence onward, whenever it gains an opportunity to ripen. That karma can remain with us for millions and billions of lifetimes. And if you know the story of Mahamoggallana, the Buddha's second chief disciple, he was he would have had like inconceivable merit to become the second chief disciple of the Buddha. And he was the one who excelled in supernormal powers, to become invisible, to fly through the sky, to move through to walk through mountains. All of those powers he had. But it's said that in some distant previous life, aeons and aeons ago, he had conspired to kill his own parents. And as a result of that, the immediate result was that he was reborn in hell and lived in hell for a long time. But that karma was not completely exhausted by the life in hell. And it was still a residue of this indefinitely effective karma. So here he is, now the Buddha's left-hand disciple, right after Sariputta. Now it would be like close to the Buddha's 80th year, and I think Moggallana, roughly the same age. A group of, what do you call these, like gangsters, gang up on Moggallana. It's said that they were hired by some of the rival ascetics to get rid of Moggallana because he was converting many people by displaying psychic powers. And so they ganged up on Moggallana and set out to kill him. And Moggallana, out of compassion for those gangsters, tried to use his psychic powers to escape. But because of that bad karma from killing his parents aeons and aeons ago, now it came to maturity. And so Moggallana tried to fly up in the sky, couldn't fly. Tried to dive down into the earth, couldn't dive into the earth. Tried to make himself invisible, he was still visible. And then the gangsters ganged up on Moggallana and killed him. And that was the result of this indefinitely effective karma. Okay, then the fourth class, that is the defunct karma. So all of the karmas that don't get the opportunity to ripen, and they miss their opportunity, become defunct. Okay, then the place of ripening. Well, maybe before I come to this, I see that this becomes an extended section. So, yeah, maybe I'll ask whether there's any questions so far on the different types of karma that we've. Yes, Chris, that's your name? Yeah.
It is? Okay, thank you, Venerable. So it seems like with the jhavanas, we're constantly producing new karmas.
Yeah.
And according to this, immediately effective karmas come up in this life, and those that don't get defunct. So I'm wondering, what is it that causes certain karmas to ripen in this lifetime, and what causes others to become defunct?
I would guess that this happens because of very complex interplay and intersections of multiple conditions.
Is there anything that we can do to make the good karmas ripen?
What I would
and the
say
bad become defunct?
probably is that doing good karma in this life will create the opportunity for other good karmas to ripen. It's a little bit, maybe to use an example. Okay, maybe somebody has maybe some karma from a past life which is tending to lead to a fatal accident in this life. Okay, if this person goes out to the bar to drink driving and then doesn't know his limits in drinking and drives, that will be creating the opportunity for that karma tending to a short lifespan to get the chance to ripen and cut off the lifespan. But if that person is maintains himself carefully, of course he won't know that he has that karma, but maintains himself carefully and doesn't go out recklessly drinking and acting irresponsibly, that would be sort of setting up barriers that would prevent that karma from getting the opportunity from ripening and cutting off the lifespan. Yeah, it could be like a destructive karma that if it gets the opportunity, it will ripen and lead to a short lifespan. But if he's careful, then it won't get the opportunity, so he'll be able to live the full lifespan.
Thank you.
Somebody here?
Yeah. In this discussion of karma and also the discussion of a human born with two roots or
a human?
A human born with two roots or three roots?
Yeah.
Does this imply that in a given lifetime, an individual has limits on what they can attain?
Yeah.
No matter how strong their volition?
That's a very good point. Yeah, I believe that it says in the text that if a human being is born with a rebirth consciousness without the beautiful roots, or with two beautiful roots, not three, then they can't achieve the jhanas or the path and fruit. So to achieve jhanas, path, and fruit, it needs the rebirth consciousness, or the bhavanga, with three good roots. And that's why it's important to cultivate, to undertake the practices which will bring up the root in this life now, the root of knowledge or wisdom, so that we can be assured of having a rebirth consciousness with three good roots in the next existence.
Thank you.
And somebody way in the back. Yeah, please stand up.
I have a question regarding the example of heavy karma that you shared earlier. So if someone committed a very heavy karma and decide to repent very sincerely, will the karma still become effective?
Yeah, one of those 5 deeds that I mentioned. Is that what you're referring to? Killing one's mother, one's father?
That was the name of that.
Excuse me? Yeah. Okay, if one has committed those 5 terrible deeds, that karma has to ripen. If one has committed one or another of those 5 terrible deeds, that karma has to ripen. It will bring its rebirth, the rebirth into the lower realm. So if one repents and then performs good deeds, one will be creating good karma that will then have its tendency to ripen sometime in the future, but there's no way to avoid the bad rebirth resulting from committing those terrible deeds. That's why sometimes you read in the news about, there have been quite a few cases within the last few years, some mentally deranged person with a gun goes and shoots a number of other people, then they go shoot their mother or their father, and then shoot themselves. And it occurs to me that that person is going to be heading for a rebirth in hell because of that. Yes, Venerable.
I have two questions. The first one is, according to this analysis, not every karma will ripen.
Yeah.
Which is quite different from what we've been learning in Mahayana. What
Yeah.
we learn is that anything you do will have a result, consequence.
Okay. I think that even that is said like in the Pali scriptures as, maybe we could distinguish like two ways of teaching. One is sort of the general teaching for edification, and the other is technical analysis. Yeah, no, it's true. For edification, and it's said like in the Pali suttas as well, that you can never escape the Dhammapada, you can't escape the consequences of a bad deed, even if you run into a mountain cave or go to a desert island. The bad deeds will catch up with you. So that is said from the standpoint of like giving morally uplifting advice to people. You should avoid all evil. Whatever evil you do, you won't escape. But from looking from the standpoint of the subtle, at the very subtle level of the interplay of different kinds of karmas, there are certain karmas that one can escape. I mean, there's no way for us to know in advance what kind of karmas we're going to escape because of the operation of other karmas. So we can't take any chances. We have to act as though we can't escape the consequences of our deeds. But in fact, certain karmas can cancel out other karmas. And I'm sure that it's said even in that it would be said in that the same, basically the same kind of classification will come in the Sarvastivada Abhidhamma, with which the great philosophers of the Mahayana, like Asanga Vasubandhu, would have been familiar with that, with those kind of those texts. So they probably accepted this also. So I don't think that there's a contradiction there. It's just the different style of teaching makes it an apparent difference.
The second question I have is regarding to the action you did by accident. You didn't have the intention. For example, you step on an insect.
Oh yeah. If there's no intention, then there's no karma.
There's no karma and no consequence?
No karmic consequence, no. Because one only creates karma when there's volition or intention, and without the presence of volition or intention, there's no karmic result. You know, there would be like consequence of the action, like, you know, just as if unknowingly, say, I put my hand on a hot frying pan, then I'm going to get burnt, but it's not, I don't have any intention of doing that. You know, so that's not a karmic consequence. Yeah. So the karmic consequences only come when there's karma. And for there to be karma created, there has to be intention, volition. Otherwise, one can never get free from bad karma, because constantly there are invisible insects and other beings that we're always killing, but without intention. We're not creating the bad karma. In fact, this was an important difference between the Buddha's teaching and the Jain teaching. The Jains they said and they still say, that even our unintentional deeds create karma. And that's why the Jain ascetics wear a mask and they always sweep the ground in front of them in the belief that they have to avoid unintentionally taking life. Otherwise, even if unintentionally they take life, they get the bad karmic consequences.
In the Mahayana, we were trained, and also we have to watch out the insects we step on by accident.
Yeah, of course we're trained in that same way too. I mean, we're trained, like, we should try to avoid taking life, but if there's no intention, then there's no karma created.
And there could still be consequence, right? Consequence is probably not exactly the same as karma.
Yeah, there won't be the karmic consequence.
There will still be consequence.
The consequence will be that the insect dies. But it won't sort of come back to one in the form of, some kind of pain or suffering. That is the ripening of a karma. That won't take place. But it's said that as part of training that one should be careful. Like in Asia, in like Sri Lanka, before we had tap water, we would always use what do they call this? A filter for filtering the water, so that we could remove any kind of living beings in the water. Okay, one question, then we'll have to go back to
So going back to your analogy of putting your hand on the burner by accident,
Yeah.
And then what if you have a slip of the tongue, which happens a lot, you curse? That's a karma?
I'd say so, because the verbalization of the curse comes through intention. Even though on reflection you wish that you hadn't done it,
Right.
but still it was done through intention. And that is why we're trained to be mindful of our own state of mind and our own intentions, so that through mindfulness then one could catch those unwholesome states of mind before they motivate unwholesome action of body and speech.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let us try to get now back into the text. Okay, so now we come to what's called the place of ripening. And so to understand the place of ripening, we have first these 4 kinds of karma: unwholesome karma, wholesome karma pertaining to the sense sphere, wholesome karma pertaining to the fine material sphere, wholesome karma pertaining to the immaterial sphere. So unwholesome karma always pertains to the sense sphere. There's no such thing as fine material sphere unwholesome karma, or immaterial sphere unwholesome karma. The beings in the fine material sphere can have unwholesome states of mind. They become greedy or attached to their meditative absorption. So that is, sense sphere chittas occur there. But unwholesome karma, by its nature, pertains to the sense sphere. Okay, so we have unwholesome karma. So this is said to be threefold according to the 3 doors of action. That's body, speech, and mind or thought. Okay, then the 3 kinds of bodily action: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, which generally occur through the door of the body. The word generally is used because I could give a command to my assistant: get rid of that person. If we want to eliminate him, or even subtly, it would be nice if the world were empty of that person. Get it? That's the way some of the big criminals operate. They give hints to their assistants. I get it, boss, get it. Okay, so then 4 pertain to speech: false speech, slander, harsh speech, then frivolous talk or idle chatter. And then 3 pertain especially to the mind: covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. And by wrong view here is meant especially as the type of unwholesome karma. It's what's called one of the morally nihilistic views that deny the validity of ethics and the retributive consequences of action. And then there are certain types that are mentioned in the suttas. We have them on page 208. Okay, then I'll skip over the section on the roots and go over on page 209, wholesome karma of the sense sphere. So we have 3 kinds of wholesome sense sphere karma by way of doors of action: bodily, verbal, and mental. And then, we could take, these. We could also take 10 kinds of wholesome karma by way of deliberately abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, deliberately abstaining from false speech, slanderous speech, harsh speech, idle chatter, and then developing non-greed, goodwill, and right view. Okay, then there's another classification of wholesome karma as threefold by way of giving, virtuous conduct, and meditation. And then tenfold, I gave the talk on this a few weeks ago, giving, virtuous conduct, meditation, reverence, service on behalf of others, sharing one's merit with others, rejoicing in the merits of others, listening to the Dharma, teaching the Dharma, and then straightening out one's views. So these are all types of wholesome karma pertaining to the sense sphere. Then there's wholesome karma of the fine material sphere. So wholesome karma of the fine material sphere is exclusively mental. It's nothing bodily or verbal you can do to create the karma that leads to rebirth in the fine material sphere. But the karma that leads, the wholesome karma of the fine material sphere, is the meditation that has reached absorption, that has reached the level of the jhanas or formless, the level of the jhanas, and this is fivefold by way of the 5 jhanas. Then the wholesome karma of the immaterial sphere, this is also purely mental, and this consists in meditation that has reached absorption, and it's fourfold by distinction of the object. Pretty long section. Okay, we'll try it anyway. We have 10 minutes. Let's see what we could get in. Okay, now we come to the results of karma. And now we're coming back to the scheme of chittas, karmically active and resultant chittas. Okay, unwholesome karma, except for the restless chitta, produces rebirth linking in the woeful plane. So the 8 types of unwholesome chittas rooted in greed, the 2 unwholesome chittas rooted in hatred, and then strangely, the doubting consciousness can produce rebirth in the bad destinations. It's said that the restless citta is, because restlessness is so strong there, it's too weak to produce rebirth. But during the course of life, that is after the occasion of rebirth, the all 12 types of unwholesome chittas will produce resultants anywhere in the sensuous world or the fine material world. And the resultants that they produce are the 7 unwholesome resultants. So those are the 5 types of sense consciousness, unwholesome resultant, eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body consciousness. Then the unwholesome resultant, receiving consciousness, and the unwholesome resultant, investigating consciousness. So those are produced by the 12 types of unwholesome chittas. Okay, then the results of sense sphere wholesome karma. So wholesome karma of the sense sphere produces rebirth linking in the sensuous blissful plane. So it seems that any kind of wholesome karma of the sense sphere will produce rebirth in the sensual blissful plane. And in the course of existence, it produces the great resultants. That is, the 8 types of beautiful resultant consciousness. And then it produces the 8 rootless resultants. Let me just backtrack. Okay, the wholesome karma of the sense sphere produces rebirth linking in the sensuous blissful plane, and it produces the great resultants in the course of existence. It produces the great resultants as the bhavanga citta, the death citta, and also, this is a little strange, as the registration cittas. The registration citta occurs as a result of karma. And then it produces also the 8 rootless resultants anywhere in the sensuous world or the fine material world, according to circumstances. This seems to me problematic. It seems to me that the text has made a mistake here that I've just realized. Okay, this is why I say it problematic. Okay, it will produce the 8 rootless resultants in the sensuous world because we have eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. So we'll produce those 5 kinds of resultant sense consciousness. Then it produces the receiving consciousness, wholesome resultant receiving consciousness, and then 2 kinds of investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity, and then the one accompanied by joy. Where the problem comes up is producing the 8 rootless resultants in the fine material world, because the beings in the fine material world, it said, don't have functioning nose, tongue, and body. So it would seem impossible for nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and body consciousness to arise there. Unfortunately, the author of this passed away in the 10th or 11th century. I should find somebody to inquire about this. Let's just see what the explanation says. Okay, the 8 rootless resultants are the 5-fold sense consciousness, the receiving consciousness, and the 2-fold investigating consciousness. Okay, then just going down, it says, all 8 rootless resultants ripen in the sensuous world, but 3 types of sense consciousness of nose, tongue, and body do not ripen in the fine material world, because the beings there, they lack the required sense faculties. Oh, I see. The mistake is actually in the translation, I think. According to circumstance, well, maybe not the mistake in the translation, but the way I've been interpreting it, it would mean, the way it's explained, that 8 arise in the sensuous world, but only 5 in the fine material world. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, receiving, and the 2 kinds of investigating consciousness, correct? Okay, then, this is very important about the wholesome results and the roots. It said, I'm in paragraph 29 now. Can we go about 5 minutes over? Okay. That superior wholesome karma accompanied by 3 roots produces the rebirth linking, also accompanied by 3 roots. And then during the course of existence, it gives rise to 16 kinds of results. But you don't have to worry about the 16 kinds of results now. But the important point, superior wholesome karma is the cause for a rebirth with 3 roots. Then it continues, it says, wholesome karma of an inferior grade accompanied by 3 roots, and wholesome karma of a superior grade accompanied by 2 roots produces rebirth linking with 2 roots. And I read this, I keep on thinking, that's not fair. That seems making really stringent requirement for getting a rebirth linking with 3 roots. And then it gives effect to 12 kinds of results during the course of existence, excluding those with 3 roots. And then wholesome karma of an inferior grade accompanied by 2 roots produces rebirth linking without roots and produces the rootless resultants during the course of existence. So it lays down pretty heavy requirements for getting rebirth linking with 3 roots. So we have to keep on cultivating wholesome activities to ensure that we get 3 roots in our future existences. Okay, then we can jump over to the results of fine material sphere wholesome karma. So basically, I already covered this, that the wholesome karma, as regarding wholesome karma of the fine material sphere, those who develop the first jhana to a limited degree are reborn into the lowest first jhana plane, the realm of Brahma's retinue, then developing the first jhana to a medium degree, one is reborn among Brahma's ministers, developing it to a superior degree, one is reborn among the Mahabrahmas. Then the same principle works for the second jhana plane, except that here it's the realm of rebirth for the second jhana and third jhana. Then the fourth jhana gives access to the 3 realms at the next level, and developing the 5th jhana, one is reborn among the gods of great reward. But if one develops this passion for perception based on the 5th jhana, then one is reborn among the non-percipient beings. Then non-returners are reborn in the pure abodes. And then coming across to the results of immaterial sphere wholesome karma. So developing wholesome karma of the immaterial sphere, the beings are reborn in the immaterial plane corresponding to their attainment. That is, whether it's the sphere of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, or neither perception nor non-perception. Oh, too bad. We come to the section on death and rebirth. Okay, so maybe if I could just do the essence of this very concisely. In fact, almost I covered pretty much this already. Okay, so there are 4 causes of death. So death can take place through the natural expiration of the lifespan. That happens in realms of existence in which the beings have a fixed lifespan. Like in the different Deva worlds, you get like, say, 12,000 year lifespan. Then when the 12,000 years go by, the life comes to an end. And similarly for like the beings in the immaterial sphere, when those 20,000 great kalpas go by, immediately one passes away. Or death can take place through the expiration of the productive karmic force, through the simultaneous expiration of both, or through the intervention of some destructive karma. Okay, the interesting section are the signs at the time of death. We already took that under the discussion of objects. That is, at the time of death, what takes place in the last conscious process will be either some karma that one performed during one's life. It comes up and presents itself to the mind. Or what's called a karma nimitta, a sign of the karma, that is some object associated with that action. Like if you remember in the case of the butcher, it can be the butcher's knife or the cows that are being slaughtered, or in the case of, say, a religious devotee, it might be an image of the Buddha appears, or some celestial palace, if they're heading for a rebirth in heaven. And then the third object can be a sign. The celestial palace will be the sign of destiny. So it could be an image of the Buddha, or they might have an image of the mala that they use, maybe for reciting the Buddha's name, or it could be some alms bowl if they gave alms to the monks, or something, a sign of their action. And then the third object is the sign of destiny. That is some sign from the realm, some object in the realm in which they're to be reborn. To be reborn in the hell realm, it will be like the flames of hell or the demons tormenting them. The animal realm, they'll start to see other animals. Or if it's to be reborn in the Deva world, they might see celestial palaces. Okay, then this gets a bit complex. So you could have to read this on your own, but the text is describing exactly what occurs on the occasion of death, and then how the death consciousness gets followed by the rebirth consciousness, taking the object of the last cognitive process in the preceding life, so that the object of that last cognitive process then becomes the object of the rebirth consciousness. And that will continue to be the object of the bhavanga, or the life continuum, through the rest of the lifespan. maybe I have to end here. I don't want to drag on. Okay, so this is the last class in our Abhidhamma series. I think I called it Mind and Mental Processes in the Pali Abhidhamma system. So thank you all for being attentive. And yeah, so we end with the sharing of the merits. And so now we're sharing the merits not just for this class, but we could take all the 10 classes together and sort of gather all of that merit together into sort of one big package. And then we share the merit first with the devas, the beings in the celestial realms, especially the Dhamma-protecting devas, the nagas, the dragon spirits who regulate the weather, and then the bhutas or fair spirits that eliminate obstacles to the Dharma, and then with departed relatives and friends and all other living beings. Akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang akasa ta chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya bhavagopadaya avichihetato etantare satakayupapana rupiya rupicha asanya sannino dukkha pamuchantu pusantu nibbutiṃ.